Last Saturday, my mother and I decided to brave the possible rain showers and ride our bikes to the Houston Women's March. Wearing my KPFT News t-shirt and my mother's pink scarf that was knitted by my grandmother, we pedaled to the waterworks at Buffalo Bayou Park on Sabine Street, the starting point of the 2018 Houston Women's March. Upon arrival, I was happy to see a large turnout despite the less than ideal weather forecast. As Houston Women's March organizer Letitia Plummer mentioned to us during last week's broadcast, the Houston Women's March is committed to the 4 C's: causes, candidates, communication, and cast your ballots. And with the 2018 midterm elections on the horizon, we were participating in a march for women's rights, immigrants' rights, Black Lives Matter, LGBT rights, refugee rights, and more. On Saturday, I had the opportunity to speak with several participants at the pre-march, during the march, and later on at the march's culminating event at City Hall.
I wanted to take time out of my weekend to stand up for what's right.
That's the voice of Amanda Tullis, the first marcher I spoke with at the waterworks at Buffalo Bayou Park. She's excited to be marching for a second time after first having attended the Houston Women's March in 2017. She's taken an active role in promoting the marches on social media and is a strong advocate of women's rights.
I think it's a matter of speaking up and bringing compassion where it is missing. I think women have always had that sort of voice, and maybe it's taken some time to get their point across, like with women's voting rights, but bringing that sense of compassion back into the discussion.
While I waited alongside others for the start of our approximately 0.3-mile trek to City Hall, I also had the chance to interview another marcher. Her name is Pat Kelly.
I'm here with 3 of my friends. We all rode in together, and we're all just mature ladies who care about what happens to our world.
Pat is also African American, and as I chatted with her, she held a sign in her hand with an unequivocal message, which read, "Stop racism now." Her motivation for coming to the march was equally clear.
I was motivated by being opposed to the current government and the racist feelings and attitudes coming out of the White House. I'm just appalled by how racist our current president is. I mean, he's not my president, but y'all's president is really a racist so-and-so.
Like many in the crowd, the midterm elections were on her mind.
Well, we really need to find some good Democrats to take over those Republican seats and vote and turn Texas blue and get out the Democrat vote this next election cycle.
Pat was appreciative of KPFT's progressive-minded listeners and seemed to remain hopeful about the prospects for Democrats in 2018.
Well, thank you all KPFT listeners, and I hope that we can make a change with this next election cycle and turn things around and get this country headed in the right direction.
As we finally started marching, I ran into Helen, a member of a Houston area French language meetup group I attend. I stopped briefly and chatted in French with her about the march and women's rights. Here's what she had to say. Women's rights are everyone's rights, and women's rights means having the right to liberty. She continued,
Oui, et tout le monde doit commencer ici. Hier, c'est trop tard pour ça.
Yes, and everyone should begin here. Yesterday is gone, the future begins right here. And you have to march here. You have to vote here. You have to begin a new life here. You have to learn new information today. Doing so tomorrow is good, but taking action in the here and now is better. Yesterday is too late. After chatting with Helen as the march began, I, along with around 20,000 marchers, began the peregrination down to City Hall. At just around the march's halfway point, I found myself walking beside two women. They were both named Sandra and were a Spanish-speaking lesbian couple. I spoke with one of them in Spanish and asked her why she was marching.
Pues lo más importante para mí hoy es que vine yo a representar para mi abuelita y para mi mamá por toda la violencia que han tenido en sus vidas.
Well, the most important thing for me today is that I came here to march to represent my grandmother and my mother and all the violence that they had in their lives. Violence that was physical, mental, emotional, anything. I came today to represent them because during the time in which they were alive, there wasn't much justice in the courts in favor of supporting families or of taking better care of families. And I am also here today representing my son for his future also. Sandra is Mexican-American and was born in the United States. She lamented the divisive nature of the current president and the uncertain future for immigrants currently living in the United States.
Sí, es muy triste y carancho también al mismo tiempo porque todos somos familias, todos somos hijos de Dios y venimos de Dios y los regresamos para atrás.
It's really sad because at the same time we all have families. We are all children of God, and we come from God and we return again to God. But yes, it's very difficult and I get really serious. Yes, it affects many diverse peoples and the people who come to this country to make a better life for their children and all of that. So, yes, there's a lot of serious thought regarding this.
Ándale, gracias a usted. Que le bendiga Dios.
As I arrived at City Hall, I scanned the crowds. My eyes fell upon two signs held by a couple of young marchers who stood side by side. The first sign belonged to Anthony, an 18-year-old and the son of Cambodian parents. His sign read, quote, "To all the little girls watching, never doubt that you are valuable and powerful and deserving of every chance and opportunity in the world," unquote. Anthony cares about people and health care. His dream is to become a doctor and work in Africa for Doctors Without Borders. He's heard stories from his parents about inequality in Cambodia, and he's marching to stand up for women's rights both here and abroad.
Well, basically, my parents are from Cambodia, and they don't actually tolerate women, and they don't treat them as the same equals as men, which is a really part of the culture there.
The second sign belonged to Linnell, a 14-year-old participating in her very first women's march. Her sign said, quote, "Feminism is the radical notion that women are people," unquote. She told me that as of right now, she's not interested in a future career in politics, but nonetheless, she certainly sounded like a budding activist.
So basically, I'm here because I too am a woman, and whenever I grow up, I want to have the same equality as men, so I can be successful in life just like them too.
Like many teenagers, Anthony and Linnell seem to have an intuitive feel for social media, and Anthony believes social media is an obvious choice for promoting the Houston Women's March, as well as other marches around the country.
I think social media is a really big aspect of these movements. You can just spread the word and just share the news.
Our conversation then shifted to Planned Parenthood, and rest assured, these youngsters did not want to see the nonprofit organization disappear.
I think for many lower income families, Planned Parenthood is very important because they offer care that it's not just birth control or abortion, stuff like that. There's way more aspects to Planned Parenthood than what people generally think that it's about.
Yes, and also women have they have the choice. It's their choice, decision to do what they want to for their body and stuff, and not anybody else's.
I mean, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. As I continued meandering through the City Hall post-march crowds, I met some really cool people. I chatted with Amanda, a Mexican-American Beyonce t-shirt wearing social worker proudly holding a Viva la Mujer sign. I also chatted with Nadia, who stood next to Amanda. Nadia held a sign that said, "Proud daughter of immigrants." Her parents were from Iran and the Philippines. She had learned to speak Spanish while living in Guatemala, and today she was sporting a stellar Notorious RBG t-shirt. It was really uplifting on Saturday to see marchers of many different nationalities, cultures, races, and ages coming together as one. This is the Houston I know. A steep incline of grassy hill at Tranquility Park overlooking City Hall was the site of my last interview for the day. Atop this hill sat Faye. Faye's 10 years old and was wearing a t-shirt that said, "Girls Don't Stop." Her t-shirt described her personality well. After finishing the march, she went straight to work, and by work, more specifically, I mean sign making. Since arriving at City Hall, she's been making signs and giving her creations to anyone interested.
I've been making them, and I am trying to give them out to as many people as I can, even though it's after the march, to try and raise spirit.
I asked her what motivated her to do this.
During the march, I saw so many really cool signs, and I thought maybe after it I could use some of this blank paper that I'm holding to make some more cool signs and give them out to people.
And her signs were really neat. Here's what some of them said. Quote, "Trump has one strength, hate. We have every other strength. The world is round, but Trump is square." Unquote. A second one had the words, quote, "Let dreamers stay," unquote. And another one read, quote, "Take your first steps into peace, love, and freedom, not war. Every voice counts," unquote. The Houston Women's March was special, and even more special for me because of the wonderful people I met along the way. Cameron Waggett, 90.1 FM, KPFT Houston, the People's News.